I'm about to add my 30th car to my Turo fleet, and believe it or not, there's actually a lot of strategy that goes into choosing the cars that I buy to add to my fleet. And so in this video, I'm going to be going over some of the core things that I look for whenever I'm looking to buy new cars. And I'm also going to be explaining why I decided to buy something like a Navigator L, which is the newest addition to my fleet. But before we dive into that,
Christmas is here, and what better way to treat yourself than starting your very own peer-to-peer car sharing business? From December 14th to December 25th, you can get $150 off the Car Sharing Masterclass by using the code Christmas150. The Car Sharing Masterclass is an extensive 7-hour course that teaches you everything you need to know about starting and scaling a car sharing business with the same business model that I've used. Over the last 6 years, I've grown my fleet to nearly 30 cars that generate anywhere between $25,000 and $30,000 each and every month. And with the Car Sharing Masterclass, I teach you how to do the same. Throughout the course, we'll go over everything you need to know, from how to buy cars, how to determine which cars are the right ones to buy, what to avoid when purchasing cars, key exchanges, communicating with guests, how to automate your business to make it semi-passive, how to navigate insurance, protection packages, damage claims. In fact, I am so confident with the quality of education that you'll receive with the Car Sharing Masterclass that we also offer a robust, no questions asked, money-back guarantee at no risk to you. So if you want to start your car sharing side hustle in 2024 and you want to lock in your spot into the Car Sharing Masterclass at a discounted price, then be sure to use the code Christmas150 before December 25th and you can get $150 off your purchase.
The very first thing that I like to look for whenever I'm buying cars for my fleet is price. I like to buy cars that cost anywhere between $5,000 and $7,000, but truthfully, as close as I can get to that $5,000 price point, the better. And there really isn't a bottom price that I look for. In the past, I've purchased cars for between $4,000 and $5,000. Pre-COVID and pre-pandemic, I was purchasing cars for well under $4,000 pretty regularly. But in today's day and age, most of the cars I buy are between $4,000 and $6,000, but I will occasionally go up as high as $7,000 if it's the right car. The reason why I buy cars in this market comes down to simple ROI, or return on investment. I know that if I spend between $5,000 and $7,000 on a car, I can make anywhere between $35 and $45 per day on that car. But I also know that if I spend, say, $10,000 or $15,000 on a car, the price per day I'll be able to make is also going to still be around $35 to $45 per day. It doesn't matter if that car is a little bit newer, a little bit nicer, and a little bit less mileage. A $15,000 car on Turo earns about the same daily rate as a $5,000 car. And for that reason, I very rarely buy cars that cost more than $7,000 because the ROI on that just doesn't make as much sense. There is an exception to this rule, and that is with high perceived value vehicles. You see, I have two different types of cars in my fleet. The first type is cheap, economical cars. These are cars that are cheap. They target local rentals who are looking for cars on a budget, and for the most part, these vehicles are no frills. Cloth seats, simple Bluetooth, some even have manual locks and windows. The purpose of these cars is to provide a cheap and reliable mode of transportation, and I put 90% of my fleet into this category. My Yaris, Ford Focuses, Mazdas, simple, reliable, and economical. And they serve an excellent purpose. These are cars that I can buy every single day for between $4,000 and $6,000. The second car I like to have in my fleet is a high perceived value vehicle. These cars are cheap, or well, cheaper, but they have a high value perception, at least in relation to how much the car is actually worth. I've talked about this a lot on my channel, but the Maserati Ghibli, in my opinion, is the textbook example of a high perceived value car. And it's one I talk about often because I used to own a Maserati that I rented out on Turo. The Maserati Ghibli is such a good example of a high perceived value car because whenever you look at a Maserati, especially if you're somebody who doesn't know cars very well, this is a wow car. I don't care what you Maserati haters say, the Maserati is a clean car, and as somebody who used to own one, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It looks great, it sounds great, it's Italian, and it's the cousin of the Ferrari. Like it or not, the average person associates a Maserati into the same camp as something like a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, or other high-end exotic cars. But a Maserati Ghibli has depreciated so poorly that while a new Maserati costs you about $100,000, a used one will only cost you about $30,000. People rent Maserati Ghiblis because they want something nice and they want to flex, but in reality, the average person could probably afford to buy a Maserati Ghibli. And so from an ROI perspective, this car rents for a lot more on a daily rate compared to other cars that you could purchase for a similar price range because of that high value perception. Another example of a lower scale, high perceived value car is the Mercedes. People love a Mercedes because they can flex with a Mercedes. My 2009 Mercedes is very average. It looks great on the exterior, but on the inside, the car is extremely outdated. Even though this car is in excellent condition for a 2009 year, it still looks old because the features the car has. And yet it rents out extremely well because it's a Mercedes. My strategy with Turo is to buy cars that appeal to a broad audience because they're cheap, affordable, and reliable, or buy cars that are cheaper but they look like they're more expensive. I would put my Lincoln Navigator L that I just purchased into this category, but we'll discuss that a little bit later. Next is reliability. I cannot stress the importance of reliability enough on this channel, and oftentimes people, especially new viewers, watch my videos and they think because of the fact that I prioritize cheap cars, cheap is the only factor that I look for whenever I'm looking for cars to buy, and that absolutely could not be further from the truth. Price is an important factor when buying a car for Turo, but I would argue that reliability is even more important. The reality is repair and downtime between repairs will kill you as a Turo host, and you need to limit those repairs and downtime as much as possible if you want to be successful. HP and I look into reliability extensively when purchasing cars, which is in large part why we buy a lot of the same cars, because reliability across these cars is very good. We buy a lot of Toyotas because they're easy to fix and they're bulletproof. We buy 2011 Focuses because they're reliable and it's before Ford changed the components of them to make them less reliable. While Mercedes are traditionally unreliable, we do own 2 of them and we are very picky about the Mercedes we buy. And even though Mercedes is our best performer, we only own 2 of them because most aren't worth buying. And we chose to buy a Lincoln Navigator L because it has a Raptor motor, which is more reliable than the motor in the Expedition Max. But it doesn't just come down to the reliability of the car as a whole, but also the condition of the specific car that you're looking to buy at the point of purchase. We put each car we buy through a pretty tough inspection and test drive, looking for knocking sounds, wet floors, evidence that the previous owner is trying to track down or repair an issue, uneven wear in tires, leaks and seeps, weird smells, proper seals in the doors. Basically anything that you could think of, we probably look for it during our purchase inspection. On my vlog channel with my husband HP, titled Aubrey and HP, we actually document every single car that we buy and the purchase process of that car. What we don't typically document on the channel is the cars that we look at that we don't end up buying. And the reality is the majority of the cars that we either consider purchasing or we look at to purchase are cars that we don't end up purchasing after all. Because the truth is most cars out there on Facebook Marketplace aren't really worth buying, and you do have to go through a lot of trash before you find a car that can do really well. And one of the final factors that we look for whenever we're buying cars is what type of need can we fill with our fleet. We try to look at our fleet from the perspective of needs that need to be filled. We have a lot of normal everyday cars that appeal to a broad audience. But over the summer, we came to the realization that we probably have a need to add more luxury cars to our fleet. So we added a second Mercedes and an extremely clean Volvo. Last year, there was a need for a minivan in our fleet, so we added a Mazda 5. And we'll probably add another minivan in 2024. This year, we wanted to add a 3-row XL SUV because this is a need that the Dallas market isn't really good at filling, so we decided to buy a Lincoln Navigator L. Maybe in your market there's need for a 4-wheel drive vehicle, an SUV, or a convertible if you're in a sunny state. The exact needs for each individual market are going to be different depending on the market, and as a Turo host, it's your job to learn your market and figure out what needs need to be filled. And for me, it's sort of like an 80-20 rule. 80% of our cars are made up of very broad, cheap vehicles, Hyundais, Fords, Toyotas. But 20% of our fleet is made up of more of these needs-specific vehicles. Mercedes, Lincoln, Volvo. Probably next year we'll not only add a minivan, but probably a pickup truck as well. These are cars that fill a specific need, and they make up approximately 20% of our fleet. The point is, you should be looking at your fleet from a broad perspective and see what types of needs you can fill in your market, and you shouldn't just be looking at it on a car per car perspective. And that brings me to my final point, which is why I purchased this Lincoln Navigator L in the first place, which was not only financed, but I also purchased it from a dealership as well. 2 things I don't typically do. And truthfully, there are a few different reasons, and I think that these reasons shed some light into some of the thought process that my husband HP and I have whenever we're buying new cars for our own fleet. Because at the end of the day, there are a lot of things that we consider whenever we buy a new car, especially if it's something that we don't typically buy. The first reason why we bought the Lincoln Navigator L is because I knew that I wanted a 3-row SUV, but I also knew that I definitely wouldn't want to buy one for personal use. I'm extremely close to my family, particularly my sisters, nieces, and my dad, and it was important for me to be able to have a car that could make it so that I could easily do things with my family. Right now, to do anything with my nieces, sisters, and my dad, we have to all take separate cars in order to do that, and I find that very annoying. So by buying the Lincoln Navigator L, not only can I take advantage of the space of the car and use it for personal use, but I can have it on Turo whenever we're not using it. That way we not only own the car for free, but we can also make money from the car as well. A win and a win. Additionally was to help build my credit score. I've been struggling to grow my credit score over the years. Back in 2018, I really hurt my score whenever I had a business that had closed, and over the years, my credit score has been slowly but surely going up little by little, month by month, by simply using my credit card. But I wanted to find a way to expedite that process, and I felt like taking out a car loan would be the best way to do this. So even though this car is a business vehicle, I did finance it under my personal name in order to build my personal credit. I ended up getting approved for a 6.5% rate, which was a huge shocker, and I'm going to end up paying the car off between 12 and 18 months, even though the term is technically for 48 months. And last but not least is the tax benefits of Section 179. Now, a couple of days ago, I went into more depth about this, but the tax benefits of owning a large SUV were definitely a key component in why we decided to buy this SUV this year. Truthfully, if this video shows you one thing, it should show you that whenever it comes to purchasing a car for Turo, there are a lot of different things that you should take into consideration whenever choosing what type of car is the best car for you. Are you buying a car from purely an ROI perspective? Are you purchasing one to make as much money as possible? Are you wanting to simply have a car that makes its payments so that you can enjoy the car whenever it's not being rented? Or are you buying a car that's almost exclusively a tax play? There are a lot of different ways that you can approach the Turo car buying process, and there really isn't an incorrect way to go about doing it. But truthfully, I think that regardless of what path you pursue, there are still a few key things that you need to make sure to keep in mind. Reliability should always be taken into consideration whenever you're buying a car. Whether you're buying a 3-row SUV, an exotic car, or an everyday car, reliability is extremely important. ROI is also important because you don't want to overpay for a car that really isn't going to make a lot on a daily rate. And below market value and depreciation are two of the most important factors that you should always take into consideration. In my opinion, regardless of the scenario, buying a new car and buying a heavily depreciated car at the top of its depreciation curve, these are two things that will never make sense regardless of your intentions with Turo. And of course, buying below market value is a great way to give yourself a safety net regardless of what type of car you buy. But you guys remember that we are currently running our Christmas sale. If you would like to check that out, you can do so by following the link in the description below. And like always, if you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it, so make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.